Today we have a crazy story of an entitled parent defending their kid after they almost ended somebody's life. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, my 25-year-old male, mother, 60-year-old female, sulks at me and it makes me feel guilty. How do I stop this? Hello, I'd like to explain my situation. I'm 25, male, and have two parents who are still married. I had a relatively peaceful childhood, but I think I suffer from my parents' dysfunctional parenting style. In fact, I think I have two emotionally immature parents. Today's message is about my mother's parenting style. She's about to turn 60 and we're relatively close to each other. I'm a university student in a demanding program that requires me to cut down on social events. As for my mother, she's always wanted to put her children first, which is why she's remained a stay-at-home mom, which I loved. On the other hand, I think she's prioritized her children too much to the detriment of her personal growth. She wants to hear from me at least once a week by phone and see me as often as possible. Since I live 2 hours from her home, I can't go and see her very often, once a month or every 2 months. On several occasions, she's blamed me for distancing myself from her, when in reality, I don't even have time for myself, and hardly any time to eat. She seems to have difficulty understanding my situation and often blames me for the lack of attention I give her. I've had a good talk with her so that she understands that I'm doing my best and that she also needs to think about herself and develop her interests to stop waiting for her children's attention. I'm not a child who necessarily wants to see my parents often. I'm quite independent and I've never felt that I could rely on my parents to help me in difficult situations. When I was a child, I found myself alone with my problems because when I spoke to my parents about them, my father wouldn't listen to me or my mother seemed to trivialize the situation. So I grew up and with age, I simply learned to rely on myself. So today, I don't think of calling them to tell them about my day or to talk about myself because they never let me do that when I was young. So when I call them, I find myself in a listening situation. Like a psychologist listening to his client, which I don't feel like doing after my day. Because of this, I'm criticized for not sharing my life with them or calling them often enough. But when I do, my father continues not to listen to me and only talks about himself, and my mother doesn't seem so interested or understanding of my events that I share with her. This week was my college break. My mother knew this and hoped I would come to see her during my vacation. I prefer to see my childhood friend whom I hadn't seen for several months so as to not lose sight of him. On top of that, due to financial difficulties, I had to work. I wrote a message to my mother yesterday and I think she's sulking. She's online and doesn't reply to non-messages, which is contrary to her habit. She tends to reply as soon as she receives a message. When she was young, she used to make me feel guilty by sulking for several days, even a week, because of some behavior that might have hurt her that I didn't know about. I already explained to her that I preferred her to name her emotions instead of sulking. Even now, I feel she's manipulating me in this way in order to give her attention and affection. I don't know how to get rid of this feeling of guilt. Have you been in a situation like mine? What to do about it? If you've read this far, thank you so much for taking the time to read my novel. Personally, OP's mom comes off to me as somebody that you kind of have to treat almost like a child with a temper tantrum. It seems like attention-seeking behavior, like they're trying to condition you to give them the reaction they want you to give them. John H. Lawyesk wrote, "As someone on a similar situation, let her sulk. It literally doesn't affect you at all. See how long it takes for her to realize it." Miserable Alarm wrote, "Pretend you don't notice and just act as if everything is fine, because if there was a problem, surely an adult like her would be able to communicate it rather than sulking like a teenager. Get on and do what you want to do. They will either get on board or talk to you less. Either is fine. At some point, they will have to realize that you are an adult and start to treat you differently. Allowing their playing up to affect how you behave is just delaying that day." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of entitled parents, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, what the freak am I supposed to do with my entitled butt mother? I'm not a nice or obedient person. When I feel attacked, I feel the urge to hit the opponent 10 times harder. Mostly by using facts and my observation on that person, but my mother's mind is out of sense. Not only she believes that she's the only right one in our arguments, but she genuinely believes that she cannot be wrong about crap. With that low butt self-esteem. Her personality is a cluster freak that's almost painful to observe, so most of the time I try to stay outside and make her feel powerless over me, and also to not focus on her crap so much. Thing is, I can keep her out of my room, but I can't keep her out of this house. So sometimes I have to go out and ask her stuff like, where's some kitchen tools? And she somehow manages to speak in a way that reveals her thinking that she owns me. No matter what I've done till now, I couldn't change that thought. I know it's smarter to just leave the idiot to be the idiot it is and move on, but I want to break her. I want to see her cry. I want to hurt her. I want to observe her as she shatters into million freaking pieces. But she's so out of sense that she basically won't accept any single thing, regardless of whether or not it's the truth, that would damage her authority over me, and accept the freaking truth that this is my life and not hers. How can I force her to accept this? Is her stupidity curable? Or will it be stuck on her skull until she dies? I basically want to win against her, making her realize that everything she believed about our relationship was wrong. As I said, I'm not a nice person. I wish I could just move out and walk away, but that ain't happening until this September. So meanwhile, I just want to break her, make her feel all that self-hatred and self-doubt and despair that she made me feel, and make her understand that she has been a terrible mother to me. So personally, I would say, especially with an end goal in sight as far as September, obviously I would like to see OP just try to stick it out until then and then cut them off. I just think for everybody involved, it's going to end better just going that route rather than trying to go nuclear and break somebody. Alternatively, Flower of Iron said, you talk about how awful she is, how you want to break her, yet you don't actually say anything bad that she's done. You're the one that sounds really messed up. You want to be independent, grow up, get a job, get a house, and pay your own bills. You also need therapy. Lots and lots of therapy. Why do you talk about wanting to kick her from the house? It sounds like it's her house. She may be quite abusive and you haven't articulated everything well. In that case, you do you. You save money, move out, and get away. There is such a thing as generational abuse. Those that are abused become abusers. Your anger paints this picture. Your best revenge is to live your best life without them in it. When you get married and they aren't invited, they will realize they messed up. Again, get therapy because your vitriol here is quite frightening. Our next story is, my entitled aunt forced my neighbors to move out. So this is my cousin's story, but I live next to them so I saw it all. My cousin, let's call him Quinn, lived in my grandpa's house. My grandma died when I was 4. He remarried when I was 6 and moved in with my step-grandma. About a year later, Quinn asked my grandpa if he could live in his house because of his growing family. He had one daughter and was expecting another at the time. That's where they lived for a long time. Enter my entitled aunt. Let's call her Karen. Karen had a history of being entitled. One time she bullied my parents into holding her son's birthday party at my house. Sons is not a typo, 2 of her kids, and then a few weeks later a family reunion. Neither of those we were invited to, much to the protest of her husband. Karen wanted to buy my step-grandma's house. The one thing in her way was Quinn. Because Quinn was in my grandpa's house, my grandparents couldn't move out. Karen called up Quinn and said, you need to move out so my mother can move in. If not, I have nieces and nephews who want a turn. Let's let all the grandkids have a turn. For the record, none of the kids or grandkids have anything to do with each other because almost all of us are adults. Over time, she got more and more pushy. It came to a full-on fight. I didn't hear much after that because I was 14 at the time. Eventually, Quinn gave in and let my grandparents move in. This led to a chain reaction of drama in his wife's family around her mom, who offered her house to them. We miss them as our neighbors. Their daughters and my little brothers love to play outside every day. They don't live too far, but the antagonist won this fight. I just needed a place to air the family drama. Thanks, Reddit. Unfortunately, they let the person who was nagging and go on continue to go on in their ear. With somebody like that, you either just straight up cut them off and block them and keep them out of your life, or really you're just gonna snap at some point, aren't you? Sadly, to me, it sounds like the bully did win here. This next story is entitled Mother Wants Me to Stop Singing Now. For context in this, I'm a busker, which is the word for people who perform in public spaces for tips. I sing. Where I live, the rules around getting a permit vary from town to town, but in my town there are basically 2 options. If you want to busk on anything that's considered council property, you have to fill out a form, tell them the dates you want, get signed permission from the nearest business owner, and give it to the council with $21. If it's Christmas time, which it was, there's a similar process that requires you to book much further ahead, which I always forget to do. Go somewhere that isn't council property and just ask permission. The place I was busking today was one of those places, and their only rules are that it's first come, first served, and you can't be like, "Hey you, give me money please." So this was the week before Christmas, and there's always a lot of competition around that time of year. I busk all year long as it helps make me known in the community, and I'm trying to build a music career, and also because it helps supplement my disability pension. I was busking as usual when Entitled Mother came up to me. Her kid was like 11-ish and was carrying a violin case. She asked me how long I'd be, and I'd only just started, so I told her several hours. I usually go about 4 hours, but sometimes I'm tired and want to leave early. She seems annoyed, but goes back to her car, comes back 2 hours later. By this time, I'd already called someone to come pick me up, but they couldn't make it until 3. It was 2:30, so I figured I'd just keep going and collapse once in the car. Entitled Mother comes up to me with her kid in tow. Entitled Mother, annoyed, said, "Are you done yet? You said you'd be 2 hours." I tell her I said I'd be several hours. She replies, "You've been here all day. It's not fair for you to be here all day, because then no one else gets a chance." I say, "I'll be leaving at 3. She says he has an appointment at 3. Me, wondering why that's my problem, replied, "Okay, I can't leave any earlier." She doesn't argue anymore, but is grumbling as she walks away. Like, I get the kid wants an opportunity. In Australia, our big between school year break starts about a week before Christmas, so he doesn't get as much opportunity before that, but this is basically my only method of saving any money or really having enough to get by. The kid has 6 weeks of holidays left, and it's first in, best served. I thought about suggesting other good busking places, but she was already halfway back to her car. It's probably for the best that OP didn't get to suggest other good places, because you don't want these kinds of people trying to bite on you in other locations, showing up while you're actually there in your suggested locations, and then getting upset that you're where you suggested, and then doing the whole song and dance, no pun intended, again, when you were the one that suggested those places. Our next story is, mother pushed in a taxi queue and started a fight with someone. Heard it all tonight. 2 women pushed into the taxi queue claiming, "I have kids to get home to. I just want a quiet life, so I couldn't be bothered to argue with why that was irrelevant, so I just let them go in front." Another guy gave them some flack, and one of the women got really aggressive, offering him a fight and saying, "I'm a barrister. I earn over $100,000 a year. I bet you only earn $25,000 a year." Jesus wept. Humans can be really toxic. I bet my money she's a difficult single mother. This really is concerning of how terribly egotistic this generation can be. I think it just goes to show how they value the life of another human. This Karen's essentially out there saying, "Do you make a lot of money? Only then will I value your opinion and your life." Either way, I don't think it's necessarily fair to boil it down to saying how egotistic a whole generation is just because you do have bad eggs like this person. Our next story is, what is the craziest thing your entitled parents have ever done to you? My mom dumped me to anyone she can, including my grandparents and school. When she saw my grandma taking care of me, she always started a fight. When she won the fight and made me go with her, she dumped me aside. When I was in 10th grade, she threatened me to get into a top uni so she can show off to my dad's family. She never cooked, always fed me junk food or carbohydrates. She always beats me up and penalizes me. I once stood in front of the balcony from afternoon till midnight. She always cuts my hair as a stress relief. She likes to see me cry and upset. I'd already been looked down and discriminated at school, mainly because of her, but she just never thinks it's her fault. The only thing I want from her is my tuition. I hated her and the education system equally. I can apply for tuition discount during high school, but people who did it will be discriminated by the entire school. A kid was told to eat after everyone because they, other kids, government, pays his tuition, said by his teacher. Freak the education system and people who have kids but shouldn't. Those unqualified teachers who bullied us also have kids now. They'll see their kids being bullied by unqualified teachers one day. I mean, I don't know where OP went to school or why their schooling system wouldn't do anything about these kinds of teachers. It almost makes me wonder if they went to school in a place where there was a shortage of teachers, so they just kind of took what they got. But I never experienced or heard of any teacher, at least where I was growing up, discriminating on any kids because they needed assistance. The whole thing's totally screwed up. Techflower said, "My mother bragged that my first boyfriend liked her better than me. He didn't. He was manipulating her so she would invite him to dinner. But she definitely flirted with him hard. He thought it was hilarious and mocked her afterwards. I never brought another boyfriend home to meet my family until I was engaged and finally had to let them meet my fiance. My mother flirted with him when I wasn't in the room, and when he didn't respond, she started talking crap about me and trying to talk him out of marrying me, telling him he had no idea how mean and lazy I was. We'd been living together for 2 years at that point. He was absolutely disgusted, and that set the tone for their relationship. 3 decades later, he still hates her. This next story is, mother goes against daughter's wishes when it comes to her new grandchild. I'm a 27-year-old female, my sister is about 29. Ever since our mother, age 58, got remarried a few years ago, we've had a complicated relationship ever since. It came to a point where my sister and brother-in-law went completely no contact due to our mother's behavior. Before and after she got married, our mother wanted to bring our family together by using some unhealthy methods. After some research, me and my sister realized she'd been gaslighting and manipulating us. Because of our mom's behavior towards us, we went into counseling and have gotten better with setting up boundaries with our mom. But this isn't exactly the end of this whole thing. Last year, my sister had her first child. This was when she and my brother-in-law were still no contact. They made an exception for her to come and see the baby since it was her grandchild, however, her husband wasn't permitted. 1, because my sister didn't want him there, and 2, because there could be a limited number of people in the room. When my mother learned her new hubby couldn't see the baby, she got really offended and said that he had a right to see his grandchild. For some context, our father died suddenly back in 2016, so we don't see anyone else as the baby's grandfather. Anyways, months later, my mom and my sister are beginning to patch things up with our mother, but there's still a bit of uneasiness about the whole situation. Our mom once told us that we didn't have to have a relationship with her new husband, and that he wasn't replacing our dad, and that he couldn't replace our father as the baby's grandfather. However, our mother being our mother has completely done the opposite. First of all, she refers to her hubby as the baby's grandfather against my sister's wishes, even coming up with a grandpa name. This makes my sister feel uncomfortable. With me, she talks to me like a child, telling me to say hello to her hubby and make eye contact when he's in the same room. She's also asked us on multiple occasions to accept her new hubby into the family. I know this sounds ridiculous and mean, but we just don't like him and we don't like the way our mother has acted when he came into our lives. Our mother's behavior changed dramatically when he started dating her. He brings out a narcissistic side we never knew she had. I mean, in a situation like this, is it not worthwhile to go no contact again? Obviously, in a perfect world, you don't have to, you wouldn't. But when it becomes so unbearable and narcissistic like that, what more can you do but distance yourself if they're not willing to adjust? Our next story is, entitled Dad Tells His Son That He Doesn't Deserve Medical Treatment, Update. Quite a few people wanted an update, so I decided to write one. The battle about taking me to a doctor was about a week long and ended when my knee started to get worse. It ended up locking and buckling at school, and I collapsed where I had to be collected from the school nurse. The school trainer called my parents and threatened that if they don't take me, then he's gonna find another way. So I went February 22nd, where he ordered a stat MRI I did that evening. I had a torn meniscus, MCL, and ACL, and I got my surgery yesterday. It's definitely painful, but I'm on a lot of drugs to try to make it manageable, and I start PT today. The surgery definitely hurts a lot more than the initial injury. I also didn't have the best experience in surgery. Nothing was botched, I just had a really rough time waking up from anesthesia. It's pretty normal to fight, but they ended up sedating me quite a few times since I kept on punching, kicking, and screaming. They eventually just said they had to let it run its course and held my limbs down. The weird thing is, I have zero memory of any of it. I've really felt sick since the surgery, which hasn't been fun, but it is what it is, I suppose. Now on to where my parents are. A lot of people were questioning where my mom was in the last post. She's still around, but wasn't really involved in the last story, minus no doctor. They've definitely been interesting, I suppose. Since surgery, they've been arguing back and forth for custody reasons and about how they should have crippled me. My dad is almost making it feel like a joke. Every 5 seconds asks if my knee's okay, etc., even though he knows the answer, but it makes it feel like he doesn't actually care. My mom told me how she doesn't have the time to discuss with insurance companies, which makes me really sad and guilty that I'm putting more of a financial strain on my family, since they're already in debt for my medical reasons 2 years ago. Anyways, that's the update. So for those that didn't catch when I read the initial story, basically OP got injured, their father downplayed it, said they didn't need to go to the doctor, actually manhandled them and probably made it worse by forcing them to straighten their leg when they couldn't. I'm glad OP finally did get the medical treatment they so desperately needed, especially considering their father probably made it worse, but they're still continuing on being awful parents. Vegito8701 said, "Don't know if you said this, but make it clear to your dad that he's the reason why you're like that. You would have most certainly needed surgery anyway, but him refusing to go before crap really hit the fan made it 1,000 times worse. Maybe he'll stop bugging you about it because he'll never admit his own fault in the matter. Stay strong, sending virtual hugs." And as Alive said, "Yeah, Dad, Nia's great thanks to you. Gonna nominate you for Dad of the Year award. Definitely one for the memory books." I bet the way he's making fun is to try and draw away from his guilt, but he needs to know it has the opposite effect. Our next story is, Entitled Mom tries to ban me from using a playground because I'm too old and she is too lazy to watch her child. Probably a minor case, but I still find it amusing. I was about 12 and at a playground in a small park near my house. Me and some other kid were on the swings. The playground is structured so swings are kind of in the middle of everything, and brilliant kids ranging from about 4 to 8 years old always ran across in front of whoever was on the swing at the time. Parents for some reason tried to catch them once or twice in 3 years of my regular presence there. Now to what happened, kids were running by about every 3 minutes. And even if they were far enough, I stopped the swing with my legs immediately, which hurt. So one day, a mom came up to me complaining that her kids are playing here or something like that, and I am putting them in danger or something. I tell her that I see and try stopping the swing when something like this happens, and the only solution was to not use the swings at all. I think I might have made a remark that she should probably teach her kids to not run in front of a swing, which was rude. Then she asks me my age, so I answer that I was 12, and she starts shouting about how playgrounds were for kids and I was too old. Keep in mind, public playground, no age restrictions. Then, judging by the dialogue, her old mom comes up to her and asks her to stop. Thank God. However, I'm pretty sure she went to sit back on the bench nearby and still made some more remarks. Yeah, classic Karen fashion. Now, I'm not advocating for kids to get hurt, especially something like a projectile from another kid's legs swinging into them full force. But if they're just not aware enough not to run directly in front of kids who are rapidly swinging back and forth, maybe it's not the worst thing for them to learn the consequences of those actions. At the very least, I think it makes a lot more sense for the entitled parent to teach their kid why they shouldn't run in front of the swings rather than try to scold the kid who's just swinging. You don't yell at the person driving the car, you yell at the kid who's dumb enough to run in traffic. Our next story is, Entitled Mom defends her daughter after she almost kills me. To start off, I'm a 14-year-old male, and I normally live in Germany, but this happened in Switzerland. My school was going out on a 4-day field trip to an adventure camp. We were told the plan beforehand. It was day 1, no events as we'd arrive in the late afternoon. Day 2, kayaking for 1 hour, and the destination was an outdoor camping spot where we would spend the night and then take a train back to camp in the morning. Day 3, 7-hour hiking trips in the Alps to a place called the Monte Rosa Hut, a stay for hikers where we'd stay again the night and hike back down in the morning. Day 4, pack up camp and return home. The first 2 days were quite nice. I liked the kayaking, although at about the 52-minute mark, I started swimming as it was going to be faster and our stuff was being taken there by a truck. However, on the 3-day mark, we were given a choice. We'd receive a choice between either the base route, which would take about 7 hours, and the 4 teachers who came with us would all be taking it, or the advanced/glacier route, where we'd be joined by 2 of the camp instructors. Before I move on, let me explain a bit on this entire camp trip. 4 of our school teachers would join us, but we also had 6 camp instructors. There were 50 students in total, and each camp instructor was responsible for 10, and the 6th one was the main lead who organized everything. Now, back to the choice again, the base route, all teachers were on it along with 4 of the camp instructors, and the glacier route had no teachers taking it, but only 2 camp instructors. Now, I enjoy hiking and didn't feel like walking till night as the base route took 7 hours, so I chose the advanced/glacier route that only takes 3 to 4 hours. 4 others ended up picking the advanced, and we departed. This is where the moment happened now. If you've never seen a glacier before, which is fine, it's essentially compressed plates of ice that formed into a floor over time, but there are massive gaps in between the plates that could go hundreds of meters down. All went smooth, and we were about halfway through when the instructor with us got a call on his walkie. And yes, there ended up being only one instructor with us, as only 5 people total picked the route. He said that he needed to head about 10 minutes back as one of the kids taking the base route, which went along the mountains above us, had dropped his sleeping bag down, but they could see that it landed a couple of 100 meters behind us. He told us to wait where we currently were while he went and grabbed it. While we waited, a woman who looked in her mid-40s came along with her daughter, who looked about 9, maybe 10. She threw us a pretty basic question of why we're here, and I just told her we're on a camp trip and waiting for our instructor to come back. She looked at me a bit strangely and said, well, me and my daughter decided if they were already in Switzerland, might as well hike. It was pretty normal, and then I eventually got up after 2 minutes as my legs were getting cold and I wanted to move them, and I just walked along one of the glacier legs. Then the woman's daughter ran up behind me and decided to push me while I was next to the ledge. I had a mini heart attack, and if I didn't have the spiked shoes that you're given for glacier hiking, I would have 100% fallen. When I got back to my senses, I backhand slapped that little crap hard enough to make her fall over. Then her mother runs over screaming, "Why would you do that? She was just playing." I thought I was in a lucid dream. My response rightfully was, "Your daughter tried to freaking kill me, you insane witch." She picked up her daughter, who was crying and still a bit dazed, and started just carrying her away and just screaming slurs. She called one of the other people who had walked over to help me, as I was still in a bit of shock, the N-word. I pretty much all the others there just asked if I was okay or needed anything. Being the person that I am, I just sat down and said, "Let's not mention this ever." And before you told me I should have told the instructor when he came back, just think the woman is already gone and all it would do is cause drama. And knowing my school, it would have made a lot of gossip. But yeah, that's my story, and to this day, I still kind of hope that some ice broke under that woman on her way back and she drowned. Call me horrible for that all you want, because I understand, but by now I've let go of that feeling and just hope I never meet her again. Tell me you would have done things differently than me if you were in my position. So hearing OP's last comments about the woman hoping the ice broke and whatnot, I read that and thought to myself, well, that's just horrible. But then I really did think to myself, how would I feel in this situation if I'm going over to this glacier edge and this kid really did try to come up and push me and end my life by falling into this 100-meter crevice? I don't think I would have it in me to get physical, but there would be some serious words and serious volume going on too. And if the mom ran over and tried to tell me off for even just like saying things, some less than polite thoughts would be crossing my mind too, I can't lie. This next story is OMFG, my own mother just took my dang laptop and made it the family laptop, even though I got it for my 13th birthday, and now I am ticked. So basically, I got my 780-pound laptop as a gift from my dad, and I got to have it for myself for a few years, and all of a sudden, this woman had the audacity to turn my laptop into a family computer so she could work on it when she could simply just get her own dang laptop. Anyway, I'm gonna take a break, shaking my head. I'm assuming, considering this was a gift from the dad and the mom was the one that took over the computer, that maybe they're not together? Either way, I would say OP should change the password. And if the mom tries to force it back, just say, listen, it was a gift for you. This is not a family computer. And if all she needs a computer for is just doing work, you can pick one up for a couple $100 that is going to do all you need to do perfectly fine. I'm just afraid if OP does change the password or take it back, they're either going to break it or try to sell it or pawn it or something. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy entitled parent story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.